Do you have 8.5 by 11 pattern paper you would like to turn into cards without making scraps to deal with later? Hi, I'm Jess from jesscrafts.com, and I'm going to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's get making. Today I'm going to share a new template that shows you how to make 4 cards from one sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper and no scraps. These are going to be A2 size cards. I did not actually have any 8.5 by 11 paper, but a couple of viewers requested this size, and so I went to my local thrift store to see if my local arts and crafts thrift store to see if I could find any paper before I bought new. And I found this pack. I'm pretty sure it's from Hobby Lobby, but I didn't buy it there. And I'm going to be trimming 2 pieces and then combining them. So I'll make 8 cards just so that I can mix up the pattern papers. You could, of course, just make this with 1 piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. That's up to you whether you want to use the same paper or pattern throughout. This is single-sided paper. It is a little bit thin and flimsy. It's probably not something I would buy new. But like I said, I just decided since I didn't have any, rather than going out and buying new, I would try to find something at the thrift store, because I actually found that 8.5 by 11 paper wasn't super common. But if you have a place that you like to buy your 8.5 by 11 paper, let me know, because, these, again, they weren't the most trendy patterns or anything like that. So anyway, I am cutting up each sheet. I'm going to use one big panel that is 3 by 3.25 by 5. And then I'm going to use 2 little strips from that same, so you cut the paper to 3 3/4 by 11. You cut 2 little 1/2-inch strips off of that, and then 2 large 5-inch panels. Then you do that again. And this is all in the template. It's a downloadable PDF. You don't really have to pay attention to the measurements, but I know some people like to kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. And then you cut the last 1 inch of the paper, which is 1 inch by 11. You can cut it into 4 pieces that are 2 3.25. However, this particular sketch works only with non-directional pattern paper. So if your paper is directional, it has a clear top and bottom, this may not be for you. The stripes are arguably directional. However, when you turn them on their side, they still work. So I used the stripe paper. But if you had something that was really strongly top and bottom, and I will say the paper pad I picked up had a lot of directional pattern paper. And so that's why I wouldn't mind sourcing something better, but this did work. So I'm cutting the mats. Sorry that my camera is really out of focus this particular time. This doesn't usually happen, but I do see that it's jumping around quite a bit, and I'm sorry for that. So I am going to cut 1/4 inch mats for each of those pieces. So you take all of the measurements and you add a 1/4 inch. The sketch in the PDF shows you the mat sizes that you'll need. So for the 3 3/4 by 5, I'll cut a 4 5 1/4 mat. And I picked out this orange pattern paper. The orange was in both of the pattern papers that I picked. So I picked this orange cardstock, sorry. I think red would have worked really well. I just find that orange is difficult to use, and I had some on hand. So I thought, well, when the occasion comes up that orange works, let me pull it out and use it. Okay, so I'm going to start assembling, and I in general like to keep my pieces in these clear envelopes so that if I'm working with a bunch of stuff and I don't want to lose it, particularly when I have these little tiny strips of pattern paper, I do find these clear envelopes to be pretty helpful. But if you're making it all at one time, you probably don't need these. When I'm crafting, my desk can get pretty messy and I can lose pieces, so these are quite helpful. And they're also helpful if you want to take this kind of card making on the go, which I often will, just even if it's just around the house, then all the pieces being together is quite helpful. So you don't have one fall under the couch or something. Anyway, the other thing that I want to share with you in this video is that these are some of the cards that I will be donating to Biddy Penny's card drive for Uvalde. I know that there are different I've heard different pronunciations, but Uvalde is the town in Texas that was affected by a tragedy recently. I don't want to go too much into it because I know we want to be careful on YouTube, but we want to support and encourage this community that was affected by this tragedy. And so she is collecting cards, and I will link you to the card drive page on her blog and to her video that explains more. I believe she has a video about it. And I just want you to be able to have that resource in case you would want to use your card making as a way of encouraging that community. I, in general, as you know, donate a lot of my cards. So when I see specific specific causes like this, I like to try to contribute to those as well. But this isn't something I would be adding to my card drive resources page just because it's a temporary thing. So I'll be individually linking it in the video and blog post for today. But if in general, if you're seeing this much later and that card drive is not going on, but you still want to encourage others, then I have the card drive resources page on my blog, and I'll link that as well. And you can find a number of organizations where you can share cards to encourage people facing different difficulties. So I am assembling my cards. I am starting with the back panel, and then there's the strip that goes across it, and then a slightly wider but shorter strip that gets layered on top. I will say that it was quite difficult for me to come up with ideas for 8.5 by 11 paper, and I think I have like 2 or 3, but they depend on the paper not being directional. And I want to try to figure out one that like will work with directional pattern paper because I found that it was common in the paper pads, and I know that it's in general it's common in pattern paper that there are some directional pads out there. So I will be looking to try to figure out an idea for that. Because these cards are going to a community that has a significant Hispanic and Latino population, I am going to be using Spanish sentiments and my Spanish jokes inside of the cards. So this is the Altenew Label Love Spanish Sentiment set. And it has a number of different Spanish sentiments, but I liked in particular that it had several that were very just like general encouraging. So they translate to hello, you are incredible, you are fabulous are the ones that I'm going to use, but there's several more. And then there are some specific occasions as well. And there's a number of organizations that I donate to on a regular basis who also request Spanish cards because they serve Spanish speaking communities or they serve countries or people outside of the US in Spanish speaking countries. So I like to have a couple of Spanish sets on hand for that reason, and I will share with you some other Spanish resources or sentiment sets that I have found out there. I also have one from MFT. This one I did find that with the Label Love in particular, because it has so much solid stamping, it can be a little bit finicky, and the MISTI can be quite helpful for getting a good impression with it, but even still, the way they're kind of designed is to not give you like really, really crisp images, it seems. I think it's maybe because the ink gets into those small words, but it has more of a sort of distressed look. Works great, and again, it has a lot of general encouragement sentiments, so it works well for what my purposes. I am coloring the Lawn Fawn Tiny Friends stamp set. I am going to color all of my images to have a more Latino or Hispanic look. So I'm going to be using a darker skin tone. Specifically, I chose the E17, E15, E13 combination and a darker hair tone so that it reflects more the community that I am sending these cards to. I know from my past teaching experience that representation matters. It's important for students to see themselves in the things that are around them, including their books, the posters on the wall. I want this to feel like these were really made for the community that these are intended for. And so This particular Lawn Fawn set, the Tiny Friends set, has a number of images that would work well colored to different races, and so it is one that I recommend if you want to include more representation on your cards. Also, if you're not really into coloring, these are really tiny. As you can see, they're about like maybe only a little bit bigger than my fingernails here. So if you don't really like to color, these will still work great. I'm using a lot of colors to blend. Like I'm still using 3 colors for their skin tones. You absolutely would not need to do that. If you colored them all, like, you know, the blue, I'm going to color all of their pants and I think there's shorts and skirts here, blue, just to make it easy and it matches my pattern paper, but you could just use the mid-tone, the B97 or whatever blue you have, and just color them solid, color their skin solid, their hair, all of that, because they are such small images. So even if you're not a colorist, but you do want to include some additional representation on your card, I would recommend this stamp set. Again, just much easier to color than some of the other ones that are out there. I chose some yellow and some red for their shirts because I was again pulling in some of the colors from the pattern paper that I chose, and I want to keep it really simple. So I colored some shirts red and some shirts yellow just to mix it up, but you could of course just choose one color and color them all in. And I just chose to put the shadows on the left. It didn't really matter because again, these are so tiny and there's no light source. This is all abstract. I would recommend the coordinating dies for this stamp set. I don't always buy coordinating dies, but because these images in this stamp set are so teeny tiny and difficult to fussy cut, I think that they are really worth it. You also could use something like your electronic die cutter. I have a scan and cut, but again, with teeny tiny images, it doesn't do as well as it does with a little bit larger images. So I like having the dies for this stamp set. It is something that I recently invested in after I found I wasn't using the stamp set without the dies. I'm going to add my sentiments here. I just cut those out with my scissors and I cut them right up to the black edges of the sentiments to keep it really simple. And I cut up a whole variety of them so I can just pull one out and then pull out one of the little characters I colored. I made sure to color a mix of boys and girls so that, again, it would serve the community best because it would, you know, there's going to be some for girls and boys. Then here I'm adding my jokes, which are in Spanish. I do not speak Spanish, but these were proofread by Spanish speakers, so they should make sense and be grammatically correct. So if you do not speak Spanish, but you want to serve a Spanish-speaking community, such as the card drive that I mentioned earlier, or from one of those organizations that is over on my card drive resources page, then you can by downloading these jokes and adding some Spanish sentiments on the front. If you found this video inspiring, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.